चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणम्। So until last week we covered A and B. So in this chapter Arjuna asked 6 questions. What is Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Gyayam? Prakriti is material nature. Purusha is the Supreme Lord, Krishna or Vishnu, call it anything. Lord is Purusha. Kshetra is the field of activity. Field of activity, for example, our body is a field of activity. Just like an agricultural field, you can do many good things, you can do bad things, you can cultivate. Based on what you cultivate, you get the fruit or result. Like you, in a regular agricultural field, based on what you sow, so shall you reap. So similarly, our body is a facility which we can use for the right purposes or wrong purposes. Right? So Kshetra is a field of activity. Kshetrajna. Kshetrajna is the knower of the field. Who is the knower of the field? There are two knowers. One is the soul. The soul is the Atma within the body. And there is the super soul, which is the Lord himself as Paramatma. He is also Kshetrajna. Jnanam means what, knowledge, what is to be known. Jnayam means what is object of knowledge. Right? What is to be known. So these are the 5 questions, 6 questions Arjuna asked. So Krishna answered 3 and 4. What is Kshetra? What is Kshetrajna? Field of activities, knower of the field, in these verses. Now he will explain Jnana. Jnana means the process of knowledge and liberation. So that's what we'll cover today. They're very powerful verses. Next we'll cover object of knowledge or Gneyam. What is, when we seek knowledge, what is the goal of that knowledge? That is this Kshetrajna, Gneyam. And then finally Krishna answers Prakriti and Purusha in the last 20 to 26 verses, right? So now we'll cover 8 to 12 verses. What is real knowledge? What is real knowledge? That we'll learn today. Amanitvam adambhitvam
Amanitvam adambhitvam
ahimsa shantirarjavam
Ahimsa Shantir Arjavam
acharyopasanam shaucham
Acharyopasanam Chosam
स्थैर्यम् आत्मा विनिग्रह
Thairyam Atma Vinigraha
इन्द्रियार्थेषु वैराग्यम्
Indriyateshu Vairagam
Anahankara evacha
Anahankara
Anahankara
cha
eva cha
Janma Mrichu Jara Vyadhi
janma
Janma
mrityu
Mrityu
jara
Jara
vyadhi
Dukkha Dosha Darsana
Dukkha
dukha
Dosham Darshanam
dosa
Ashaktir Anabhiswanga
asaktir anabhisvangaha
Ashaktirabhisvanga
Putradhara Vihadisha
Uttradara
pradhara
Grihadishu
grahadishu
Yam Cha Samachitatvam
nityam
Nitya
cha
Samachittatvam
samachittatvam
Ishtanishtopapatishu
ishtanisto
Ayi Chanan Yogena
Aichanoranya yogena
Bhaktir Abhyavicharini
bhaktir vyabhicharini
Bhakti
Vikta Desha Seditvam
Vivikta Desha
viviktadesha
Sevitam
sevitam
Aratir Sansade
aratyajana samsadi
Samsadi
Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam
Adhyatma Dhyana
adhyatmadhyana
Nityatvam
nityatvam
Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam
Tattva
tattvagnanartha darshanam
Darshanam
Etajnanam Iti Proktam
etat jnanam iti
Jnanamiti
proktam
Proktam
Yat Ato Atonyata.
Ajnanam
ajnanam yad
Yat Atonyata.
atonyata.
So these are very important words in this verse. So let's go through synonyms. Amanitvam. Amanitvam means humility. So these are all the items of knowledge. What are these items of knowledge? So towards the end, Krishna says, beyond this, there is no other knowledge. Everything else is ignorance. This is the real knowledge. Okay? Amanitvam means humility. Prabhupada gives wonderful definition of what is humility. We'll read that. And then adhambitvam means pridelessness. They are different. Humility is different from pridelessness. Right? You have a lot of things, but you don't show any pride, right? That is pridelessness. Ahimsa means non-violence. Kshanti, tolerance. Arjavam, simplicity. Simple in dealings means you're not crooked or what do you call duplicitous behavior. No duplicitous behavior. Acharya upasanam. Approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Approaching a guru. Right? So these are all qualities of a great personality. No? We should all try to acquire these qualities. Krishna says this is the true, a person with true knowledge will acquire all these qualities. Right? We think in the material world, we acquire knowledge of, software and this and that, that is knowledge. Actually, that is all not considered, it's all ignorance actually. The real knowledge is actually these qualities. Saucham, cleanliness. Cleanliness both inside as well as outside. Inside means cleaning, keeping the mind clean with good thoughts, good ideas. Right? Outside means, outside cleanliness means, external cleanliness. Taking bath regularly and, worshipping Lord. So that is all clean habits. Sthiryam, steadfastness. Atma vinigraha, self-control. Indriyardheshu, in where? In the matter of senses. Self-control in the matter of senses. Atma vinigraha. Vairagyam, renunciation. Right? The spirit of renunciation. Why is it important? Because we are not owners of anything in this world. We come here for a temporary period, we leave. So there is nothing to really renounce. Because nothing really belongs to you. Everything belongs to God. You come, you're trusted with certain things, certain family, certain home, certain facilities, certain things in your hand. and at the time of death, you will give up everything, right? You knowing that you will anyway have to give up everything, you should never be attached to anything, right? That is the spirit of renunciation. Ahankaraha means being without false egotism. False ego means false ego. Ego means self. False ego means false self. The true self is Atma. But if we think we are, I'm an engineer, I belong to a higher, I belong to a higher cadre of life, we think we are big. So those are all false identities, right? Any day they can be stripped away from you. Your home, your car, your job, your family, everything can be stripped away from you, right? So nothing to really feel proud about. The only thing you should feel proud about is your connection, your spiritual pursuit, your connection with spiritual, connection with Lord. Those are the only things. We are proud about, greatness of Lord, but not our greatness. We are nobody, right? Anahankara. Ahankara means false pride. Ahankara means no false pride. Certainly. Yeah. So these are all the items of knowledge, and one should be fearful of these things: janma, birth, mrityu, death, jara, old age, vyadhi means disease, dukkha, of distress, dosha, fault, anudharshanam, observing. One who observes birth, death, old age, and disease as the real problems of life. Real problems of life means problems that are common to everyone, nobody wants, nobody can avoid, right? Nobody can avoid mrityu, death. Nobody can avoid old age. Nobody can avoid disease in this world. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants these problems, right? And common to all. Everybody gets this. So these are called real problems. For example, you may lose job, but that's not a problem for everybody. Most people have it. So a problem to be called real problem, it should be common to all. Nobody wants, nobody can avoid, right? So in that category, the real problems are janma, mrityu, jara, and vyadhi. So these are the 4 real problems. Asakti, being without attachment, right? Not being attached to anything. Today you get something, tomorrow you lose something. We are not too much emotionally wavered by your position or situation. Anabhiswangha means being without association. Putra, dhara, grihadeshu, for son, wife, or husband, or home, right? Don't be too attached to any of this. Nityam, constant. Samachittatvam, equilibrium, always balanced. Ishta, the desirable, and anishta means undesirable, doesn't differentiate. Upapattishu, having obtained. Mayi means unto me. Ananya yogena, by unalloyed devotion service. Bhakti, devotion. Abhyabhicharini, without any break. Continuously performing bhakti towards Lord, right? Vivikta, to solitary desha, places. One who likes to live in solitary places, that is good. Sevitvam, aspiring. Arati, being without attachment. Arati, being similar to asakti. Arati. Jana samsadi, to people in general. Adhyatma, pertaining to the self. Jnana, in knowledge. Nityatvam, constancy. Tattva jnana, of knowledge of the truth. Ardha, for the object. Darshanam, philosophy. Etat, all this. Jnanam. Iti, thus, proktam, declared. Ajnanam, ignorance. Yat, that which, ataha, anyata, from the other. So anything except describe what is described here is called ignorance. Yeah, nice verse. So please read this verse. Translation, anyone?
Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance.
Yeah, very beautiful verse that explains all the qualities. And Prabhupada actually gives a beautiful explanation in this verse for each of these qualities. Okay, we'll not go into deep, but for example, non-violence, right? Non-violence, we think, what Mahatma Gandhi did is non-violence, fight in non-violence mode. But actually it is not. Non-violence is generally taken to mean not killing or destroying the body. But actually, non-violence means not to put others into distress. It's not about just bodily, not killing or destroying body. It's mainly about not putting others into distress. People in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pains, right? Because you have a material body, you continue to come back to this world, material world, again and again and again. So unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, unless one elevates, means one helps others by giving and sharing the spiritual knowledge, one is actually practicing violence. If one is not helping others, especially those who have the knowledge, spiritual knowledge, right? So this is actually real violence. If you have spiritual knowledge and you see that others are going through the cycle of birth and death continuously, and you are not acting on that, trying to help them or somehow bring them close to Bhagavad Gita or a temple or a devotee, you're not doing any of that, that is actually practicing violence, right? Because real violence is about, missing the opportunity for the soul to reach its potential, right? Because otherwise what happens to the soul? He again he has the human form, but he is unable to pursue anything spiritually. So he'll go back to the material world again and again. He will be in the cycle of birth and death. So this is real help. This is real non-violence, to help a soul to reach its potential. So one should try his best to distribute real knowledge to people so that they may become enlightened and leave this material entanglement. That is true non-violence. You see, this is a much, much deeper meaning than what we understood at the bodily level, right? Not killing the body. That's not just as simple as that. It is actually helping other conditioned souls by giving spiritual knowledge. That is true non-violence. You see, it's a positive, right? This is a, negating the negative. But what about the positive? This is the real positive. Real. Otherwise, violence means, otherwise the jiva is just trapped in the material body. He keeps coming back again and again. What is the point? Tolerance means, I'll just read a couple of them. Tolerance, right? Tolerance means one should practice to bear insult and dishonor from others. Should be ready to face insult and dishonor. In Kali Yuga, it is very difficult. Everybody gets mad if they are insulted. They can't tolerate it all. If one is engaged in advancement of spiritual knowledge, there will be so many insults and much dishonor from others. You see, this happens, especially when when you are engaged in advancement of spiritual knowledge, because people misunderstand. What are you doing? You're wasting time. Like that people say, some people who are very materialistic, right? This is expected because material nature is so constituted. Even a boy like Prahlada, who only 5 years old, was engaged in cultivation of spiritual knowledge, was endangered when his father became antagonistic to his devotion. We know the story of Prahlad. When he started seriously pursuing spiritual knowledge, his father became his enemy, right? So similarly, you will find a lot of people who will become your enemies as soon as you start practicing spiritual life seriously. The father tried to kill him in so many ways, but Prahlad tolerated him. So there may be many impediments to making advancement in spiritual knowledge, but we should be tolerant and continue our progress with determination. Tolerance is real. The real tolerance is ready to bear the insult and dishonor from others, especially when we practice spiritual path. Right? That is what it means. Yeah.
One question here.
Yes, Professor.
Yeah, so if you tolerate insult or anything from others, so if they take it as granted, what should we do? I mean, right? They'll take it as granted and they'll do more harm to us. Then what do we do in that case? Should we tolerate more or should we fight?
I mean, you should do whatever is needed if it is completely unjust, right? You should. This is not saying you don't. So there is some inner misery when you go through this the insult, right? That inner misery at your level should be avoided, right? So we do whatever is necessary. For example, Prahlad, even though he was externally tolerating all the insults, he was taking shelter of Lord, right? He was speaking to his father also. He's not keeping silent and just accepting. He says, his father asks him, hey, you are just 5 years old. How confident you are in Vishnu that you are, where do you really get your strength to speak like this, right? You know what he says? He says, I get the strength from the same place where you get your strength. It's such an insult to Hiranyakashipu because Hiranyakashipu always thought he is the best. There is nobody above him. But when he was reminded Vishnu is the source of your energy, he felt very insulted. He couldn't take it. So like that, he was answering to the truth. He was speaking truth all the time. He was not, at the same time, he was tolerating. He was not personally attacking his father. He was tolerating, speaking the truth, and taking shelter of Lord. It's not silent acceptance or silent agreeing to the situation, right? You offer your idea, you offer your situation, but internally you're not going to become miserable as long as you're on the right path. You stick to your principles and you pursue the path of truth, right?
Okay, Prabhu. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a very dicey, it's not very straightforward. I mean, practical situation to situation, we have to adopt how we need to deal with this. Yeah, but the principle is take shelter of Lord and not be too aggrieved when you go through such tough times, and accept everything as mercy of Lord. A great devotee thinks, actually I deserve much worse than this, but God is so merciful that he only gave a token of misery instead of the entire misery upon me, right? So there is that beautiful verse called Tattenu Kampam Susumikshamanam, right? We read the Tatenukampam susumekshmano Gunjana evatmakritam vipakam Vidbir vidadam namaste Jive tayo mukti pade sadhaya bhak. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. A lot of people, when challenges come upon them, they lose faith in God. But what is mentioned here? Whatever I'm going through is because of my past misdeeds. I may not know what it is. It may not be in this life. It could be coming from past life. Right? All the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds. But I will not reduce my faith in you, O Lord, offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body. Actually, he becomes more closer to God in those situations because he takes real shelter of Lord in those tough times. Right? And accept everything as his causeless mercy upon him. Meaning, all the situations are there to teach me some lesson. That's how he sees everything. Right? When one does like that, what happens? For it has become, no, he's surely eligible for liberation. He is liberated. Even though he is in the material body, he is a Jivan Mukta. For it has become his rightful claim. So these are all cleanliness means making advancement in spiritual life. Two kinds of cleanliness. One is external, one is internal. External cleanliness means taking bath. But for internal cleansing, one has to think of Krishna always and chant Hare Krishna. Right? So this is internal cleanliness and external cleanliness. Yeah. So like that, every word has a very beautiful definition given by Prabhupada here. False ego means we already discussed, accepting body as oneself. Yeah. So this is another practical thing. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feelings for these. They are natural objects of affection. But when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. Right? If they are distracting you from your spiritual life, meaning they're making you more and more materialistic, then you should be careful. Should not be attached. It doesn't mean you don't perform your duties. Right? The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuff offered to Krishna. Have some discussions on books like Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. Very simple. Huh? Anybody can do it. These four things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. Right? It doesn't take much time. It only takes like 30 minutes every day. So that makes you happy because God is in your life. Every day you can do simple things. Offer your food, chant Hare Krishna, right? Read some 1 or 2 slokas of Bhagavad Gita. That's it. God is in your life. What else you want? Everything is, made convenient for you. Happiness and distress. Huh? They're all part of material life. Yeah, so beautiful explanations. You can all read this. Okay, let's move on to the next verse. Neyam yat pravakshyami
Pravakshyami
yajñāmritam ashnute
Yajñāmritam asnute
anadi mataram brahma
Anadi Matparama
Sattam Nasaduchyate.
Nasattam Nasaruchyate.
Please read.
I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world.
Hmm. So I shall now explain the knowable, Jnayam, what is to be known. Knowing which you shall taste the eternal. You can taste you get the experience of what is eternal, right? Brahman, right? Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me. So, what is Krishna saying? Brahman is actually subordinate to me. Anadi Matparam Brahma. Anadi Matparam. Anadi means eternal. Beginningless. Matparam, subordinate to me. What is it? Brahma. Nasattan Nashaduchyate. Right? Which lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Right? So, what is to be pursued in knowledge? One should pursue Brahman. Right? Brahman, which is actually subordinate to Krishna. It is an eternal thing that exists in the spiritual realm. Right? Beyond this material existence is Brahman. Right? Brahman is pure consciousness. And one category of people, their goal is to merge into Brahman. That is their goal of self-realization. But we are not after that kind of goal. We are not after merging into Brahman. There is beyond Brahman is spiritual realms called Vaikunthas or Goloka Vrindavana. Devotee actually wants to pursue or want to achieve those spiritual planets. They are not interested in between the material, the Brahma Jyoti, in between the material worlds and spiritual worlds. Sarvata Panipadam Tat.
Sarvata Panipadam
Sarvatokshi Shiromukam.
Sarvatokshiromukam.
Sarvata Sruti Maloke.
Sarvasrutimaloke.
Sarvam Avritya Tishtate.
Sarvam Avritya Tishtati.
Please read.
Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists, pervading everything.
So this is explanation about the super soul, how super soul pervades everything. Sarvata Panipadam Tat means his hands and legs are everywhere. Means he is everywhere, in every atom. Brahma Samhita says, Andantarastra Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Andantarastra Paramanu Chayantarastam. He is inside each atom and also in between the atoms. Lord as Paramatma is existing everywhere. There is no place where he is not existing. So his legs, hands, because everywhere, wherever he is conscious. He can act, he can see, he can touch, he can talk, he can understand. So God is everywhere. Right? So he's pervading everything. Yeah. So how one easy way to understand how God is everywhere is the example of sun. Prabhupada talks about sun example. As the sun exists, diffusing its unlimited rays, so does the super soul or supreme Lord. He exists in his all-pervading form, and in him exist all the individual living entities, beginning from the first great teacher Brahma, down to the small ants, from Brahma down to ants, right? So he is everywhere. There are unlimited heads, legs, hands, and eyes, and unlimited living entities. All are existing in and on the super soul. Everything exists on the super soul. Therefore, the super soul is all pervading. The individual soul, however, cannot say that he has his hands, legs, and eyes everywhere. That is not possible. If he thinks that under ignorance he is not conscious that his hands and legs are diffused all over, but when he attains to proper knowledge, he will come to that stage. We cannot say our hands are everywhere, right? It's only possible for God to have his hands everywhere. Our knowledge, our consciousness is all limited to our body. We don't know what is happening in our children's body, right? But God, he knows everything because he is in everybody, right? So that is the difference between Jiva and Brahma.
Prabhuji, I have a question here.
Yeah, please.
So in our body, like in every human being or in every living entity, it is said that there is soul and super soul, right? So are those two separate, or the soul exists in the super soul, like as a subset?
Very good question. They exist separately. They are two different things. Soul and super soul are never one. Soul is, right? Soul is the Jiva that is identifying with this body right now. That is soul. The Paramatma is not identifying with this body. Paramatma is a separate witness that is constantly observing the Jivatma, right? Upadrishta, Anumanta, cha, Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara. It's coming in this way, in this chapter, right? So Krishna is this. What is he? Upadrishta, Upadrishtanu Anumanta cha, Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara, Paramatmeti chapyukto, Dehesmin Purusha para. Yet in this body, there is another, a transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord. Very clear, right? Is it clear? Yet there is another transcendental enjoyer, the supreme proprietor who exists as the overseer, means who oversees everything, supervises everything. Permitter means who permits the soul. You can do this. I can lift my hand right now, but only because super soul permitted. The soul desired to lift, super soul permitted. The body is actually material nature, body lifted. So super soul has the permission to actually lift the hand. I don't have the ability to lift. The soul doesn't have the ability to lift. It is a super soul who permits the material nature to act on your behalf, right? And who is the knower, who is known as the super soul, right? He is Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara. He is the actual enjoyer. He is the personality. He is the second dweller in the body, right? 23rd verse, right? So let's see 22nd verse. What does 22nd verse? Because yet another, he's talking about yet another, right? So there must be the other jiva that is residing, right? So now the living, it is talked about living entity. Purushaha prakritosto hi bhungte prakriti jan guna karanam guna sangosya sadashad yoni janmasu. Here it is talking about living entity. Next verse is talking about super soul. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of material nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. Right? So that is about the jiva. Is very clear?
Yes, Prabhuji, it's clear now.
Again, one more verse talks about the same thing. Kshetrajna, Kshetra, right? Where see Krishna clearly talking about, one can clearly understand Krishna is different from us. You should know that I am also the knower of all the bodies. For example, if I ask you, do you know all the bodies or do you know only your body? If I ask you, what do you say?
Yeah, we know only about our body.
Because
Even we don't know our body also.
body also we don't know. So the soul, purview of the soul is only within the body. It is conscious what happens within the body. And we don't know also fully, but whatever we know is within the body, right? Very clear. Only Krishna can say this. Why? Because he is God, right? I am also the knower of all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. The next verse. How come this verse is missing?
So Prabhuji, when the soul leaves the body after death, so the Jivatma, when it leaves the body, so the super soul also will accompany it with to the next birth, to the next body.
There are few things that go along with the body. So along with the soul. The soul is carried away with the subtle body. The gross body changes. When we die, it is only the gross body changes. The body made of earth, water, air, ether, right? The subtle body, which is made of one's mind, intelligence, and false ego, the identity, those will be going with the soul. The soul carried by the subtle body, directed by the Supreme Lord, will enter the next body. Okay? Karanam gunasangasya sadasat janma yonisu. Karanam gunasangasya. Yeah, this verse talks about it. What is it? Purushaha Prakriti. Oh, we're all in this chapter now. All things will be explained. Yeah, the previous verse, right? Yeah. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life. Yeah, this is about the jiva, how we travel, how the jiva goes to various things based on its karma. We'll come to that. Yeah, we'll continue. Yeah, this is about Lord as Brahman aspect of Lord. We read this. Yeah. Sarvendriya Gunabhasham.
Sarvendriya Gunabhasham.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Ashaktam Sarva Bhritchaiva.
Asaktam Sarvabhutchaiva.
Nirgunam Gunabhoktra cha.
Nirgunam Gunabhokta cha.
Please read.
The super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all the modes of material nature.
Very interesting. Because super soul is not material, it is spiritual, completely spiritual. So that's why it's mentioned he is without senses. He is the source of all senses, but his senses are all spiritual. So what we understand about senses is all material. So he doesn't have many material senses. Being the source, he would definitely be able to do what we can do with our senses. Meaning, if I can see with my eyes, Right? The eye is a sense object. Eye is a sense. I can see with the eye. Lord is the source of eye. That's what this verse says. But he is without senses means he is not without the senses like our material eyes. He has spiritual senses. His body is Satchidananda, so he has the ability to. Of course, he is the source of ability to see. So he has the ability to see, but his ability is not material. It is spiritual senses. Okay. Some people misunderstand. Oh, God doesn't have any senses. No, he is the source of all senses. How can he not see? If you can see, how can the source of you cannot see? Right? How can the source of you cannot see, hear? How can he, when devotee offers prayers, Lord definitely hears. He has his, we read here, right? He has his eyes, ears everywhere. He can hear from anywhere, right? So one should not be confused with his own abilities when understanding about God. Oh, I can't hear everywhere. Oh, how can God hear? God is not you. God is way more powerful. There is no comparison. Okay, one should very clearly understand he is nothing, and God is far beyond and above everything. He is unattached, although he is maintainer of all living entities. He maintains everybody. For example, if you maintain somebody, you become attached to him, right? You, like your children or your wife or your husband, you become attached because you're maintaining them. But Lord is fully detached, means he has no kind of attachment, right? Attachment is a material thing, so he doesn't have any material aspects in his existence. He transcends the modes of nature. He is the source of all modes of nature. He is beyond all modes of nature. Modes of nature means goodness, passion, and ignorance. And at the same time, he is the master of all the modes of material nature. He is the source. From him comes all the modes of nature. So he is beyond all of that. So when Lord appears, it's not like our appearance. He appears by his own choice. For example, we are forced to take birth in a particular family, certain society with certain karmic background, meaning wealth, everything, right? We are forced based on our karma. We have to have a body. But Lord, when he appears, it is out of his sweet will, okay? Out of his purpose. It's not like us who are forced to enter or appear as per forced by our karma. Right? He is not contaminated by material energy because he is the Lord of material energy. In Vedic literature, we find that his whole embodiment is spiritual. Right? His existence, his body, everything is transcendental or spiritual. He has his eternal form called Satchidananda Vigraha. He is full of all opulence. He is the proprietor of all wealth and owner of all energy. He is the most intelligent and is full of knowledge. These are some of the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the maintainer of all living entities and witness of all activity. As far as we can understand from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Although we do not see his head, face, hands, or legs, he has them. And when we are elevated to the transcendental situation, we can see the Lord's form. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. Therefore, the impersonalist, who are still materially affected, cannot understand the personality of Godhead. Bahir antascha bhutanam
Bahir
Antascha bhutanam
charam charameva cha
acharam charam cha
shat sukshmasvat tad avigneyam
sukshmasvat tat avidneyam
rastam chantike chatat.
durastam shantike cha tat.
Please read.
The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far, far away, he is also near to all.
Now, the nature of Supreme Lord is explained. He exists in outside and inside of all living beings. He is everywhere. Sarvatopani Padamcha, the previous verse. The moving and non-moving. He is in the trees, he is in the living entities like human beings. Right? He is everywhere. Not only living, it is also present in every atom. Right? We all studied. The electrons and protons move in different directions with energy. Who is giving that energy to those electrons and protons? We never asked how are those moving in such a small particle? It is because of the presence of Paramatma within them. There is no Atma there. There is Paramatma only, and because of which the even electrons and protons move. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of material senses to see or to know. Nobody can know him. Through material senses. One cannot know through material senses. Yeah. So how one can understand God? By engaging our senses in the service of Lord, can we understand God? Meaning, you offer various services to Lord. That is how you can. Then, Krishna will give the intelligence for us to understand Him as much as needed, right? At least to go back to God, to go back to His place. He will give that much understanding about God. Right? Otherwise, we cannot pursue with our material senses to understand God. They're trying to find, the God particle, Higgs boson experiment. Spent billions of dollars in that experiment, right? But nobody can, experiment and pursue and find God. It's beyond such material endeavors. It is only revealed to us based on our eligibility of it, right? The spiritual relation or spiritual development is always a blessing. It is never something achieved by our own efforts. It is only by the grace of great devotees can we actually achieve advancement. Although far from away, he is also near to all. He is everywhere. But because the conditioned jiva cannot see everywhere God, he is still very much conditioned. If he is pure devotee, he can easily see God everywhere. In everything he can see God. But we cannot see God everywhere, unfortunately. So that is the reason Krishna incarnates in the form of Archa Vigraha in the temple. If not everywhere, at least you can see God in the temple's Vigraha. Right? And he says he is equivalent there. He is equally potent there, even in the Archa Vigraha. Because he is everywhere, he is also there in the Archa Vigraha. And because of the prayers offered by great devotees to appear in the Archa Vigraha, Lord actually appears in that Archa Vigraha in a lively form and actually accept the devotees' offerings. Right? So, Lord is everywhere, but by the prayers of the devotees, Lord appears in a particular Vigraha and acts with his full potencies. He can bless you, he can do anything. He is all powerful in Archa Vigraha. Archa Vigraha is not a representation of God. Many people think this Vigraha in temple is some kind of a representation of God. It's not representation. That Archa Vigraha is God himself. Right? So he is not to be treated as anything inferior to God in Vaikuntha. He is equivalent. He is the most accessible form of Lord for devotees to offer prayers.
Prabhuji, we need to attend Damodarashtakam 7 o'clock.
Sure. Miss. Yeah.
Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
yeah, no worries. So we'll continue from 17th verse next week. Thank you all very much. If you have any questions, you can stay back and we can discuss.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you,
you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.